Welcome to the Unlist. It's been a while since I've done a video about an individual material, right? I think the last one was patchouli, and it's been even longer since I've covered a synthetic material, so this is going way back. But you could say it's a breath of fresh air, or not really, because it's chemicals. The name of the game is ISO-E Super. We are talking all about ISO-E Super. And just like ambroxan or dihydromercenol or Kalone 1951 or norlimbinol, it's one of those materials that gets name dropped by haters, people who want to blame chemistry for the downfall of all their favorite fragrances, usually stuff from the 70s and from the 80s. It's where they fixate and fascinate, and they're like, oh, they took away my oak moss and they gave me some norlimbinals. They took away my sandalwood and they gave me them ambrosinides and all them other fancy dihydromercenol and stuff. And I hate it. It's reformulations that kill my perfume. It's like there's some weird, like, pass the plate and praise Jesus kind of people at one of those mega churches. They're like in those big stadium-sized mega churches. They're up on their pulpits like, yeah, we need to strike down these chemicals because they destroyed our perfumes. Amen. And I'm like, no, it's not really like that. You don't really know how perfumes are made, so you can just kind of shut up a little bit. So the thing is, ISO-E Super is extremely old, okay? And it's the same name of the game as with Hedione back in the 60s. Ambroxan back in the 50s, okay? All right? ISO-E Super is actually older than dihydromercenol, okay? ISO-E Super was first commercialized after being discovered in 1973. It was discovered by John B. Hall and James M. Sanders. Yeah, two guys, John B. Hall and James M. Sanders. With IFF, International Flavors and Fragrances. IFF is basically the go-to for a lot of American perfumers. Estee Lauder was a big fan of IFF for years. Bernard Chant, Josephine Catapano, all those are IFF perfumers going back. But on the chemistry side of things, James B. Hall and, James M. Sanders and John B. Hall, see, I almost got their names mixed up there. The two of them discovered isocyclamone E is the real name of the material. Isocyclamone, say it with me, isocyclamone E, or ISO-E Super is the name of the actual material. And it took them a while to figure out what it could actually do. Like most of these synthetic materials, they created it and then didn't have a purpose for it right away. That's why galaxolide was first used in laundry soaps and things and dish detergent, because they didn't know what else to really do with it, right? And ambroxan was extremely expensive to synthesize back in the 50s when they first discovered it. The crystals are very hard to make. They had to derive it from sage, basically. They had to separate clary sage out to make the stuff. Very expensive process. So again, they didn't really know what to do with the stuff. So in the case of isocyclamone E, or ISO-E Super, it first made its appearances in, bath products. Any kind of soap or shampoo or any kind of personal hygiene product that needed a boost in the sillage of the perfume applied to the soap. So just think about that. You're making a bar of soap, you're making a shampoo, and you want the smell of that particular soap or shampoo to last longer than just being in the shower. You want the smell to carry with you a little bit once you're done, once you dry your hair off. Once you're done soaping up and you wash down, you want the smell to remain. And they discovered that ISO-E Super, isocyclamone E, was very good at retaining the fragrance, but in a way that didn't add a traditional base nuance. So you don't want a commercial fragrance like a soap or a shampoo to have a heavy oak moss or heavy civet or tonka. You don't want it to have this big based out smell, right? You just want it to be like a top note fragrance, like a middle top note fragrance. It's going to smell good for a little while, and then it lingers on your skin again for another 10, 20 minutes or whatever, and then it's gone. Then you can put on whatever perfume or deodorant you intend to wear. That's how it was originally used. and it made its first appearance in Halston, 1975. The women's Halston, not the men's Z14 or I12 or 112. It was the original self-titled Halston fragrance, women's fragrance from 1975. Had like 12%, I think, ISOE Super in it. Again, to boost the sillage of the fragrance, to boost its detectability in the air. That's what it was used for. That's what it's always been used for. And a lot of people say, okay, well, it's like a cedar wood note. I'm like, not by itself. Not by itself. You have to have a little bit of some other material that creates a cedar note, and then you can use ISOE to boost the shit out of that note. That's how it works. ISOE Super is kind of like the MSG, you know, for other materials. Ambroxan is the same way, actually. Ambroxan also becomes a kind of an MSG flavor enhancer and umami enhancer for your fragrances. But they both do it differently, because ISOE Super, when you concentrate it, has a very nasty rubbing alcohol smell when you smell it in concentration. So it's a drier smell for that reason, right? It doesn't have the oceanic freshness, saltiness that Ambroxan can have. It's got a dry smell, and that dry smell pairs very well with woody materials, which is why it gets used to boost cedar, right? It gets used to boost incense, like in Jubilation 25 by Amouage. It gets used to boost any kind of woody, incensey notes. It by itself does not really create those notes, but its dryness lends itself to boosting those notes. And that is why when you move through time, you go into the 80s and you see things like Fahrenheit, which Fahrenheit has a very notable dry petrol leather accord, right? With cedar wood and vanilla in it. It's got some kind of weird methyl heptane something or other material that was part of the barrel note in that fragrance. I'm not going to go into that. That could be its own video where you talk about how Fahrenheit was created by accident and the barrel note was created by accident. But the ISOE Super in that fragrance, dosed at 21% originally, is what gives you that dry feeling to the fragrance, which the vanilla sort of counteracts that a bit, but the dry gasoline violets and the cedar wood and the leather, right? Same sort of deal. And then you've got the Lancôme Tresser from 1990, 2 years later. Now, Lancôme Tresser is famous for having the Hug Me Accord in it. And Sonia Grossman, if I'm saying her name correctly, Sonia Grossman is also a perfumer who is well known for synthetic wielding. She created things like Calyx for prescriptives, now Clinique. She's made a bunch of other things. She's made, I want to say either it was Oscar or White Linen, one of those two she made in the earlier years. And then, of course, Beautiful for Estee Lauder. And then Tresser was one of the big fragrances for her. I think she was also assigned to the original Eternity, the women's Eternity, not the men's, so from 87. But her Hug Me Accord contained a bit of ISOE Super in it. So it's a whole lot of other stuff too. Okay, the Hug Me Accord is a very complex accord, but one of its key materials is ISOE Super, and that you will find in Tresser from 1990, Lancôme Tresser. Now you move a little further into the future and we see Declaration, Jean-Claude Ellena. Declaration was somewhere like 35% ISOE Super. Are you seeing the pattern that I'm developing for you here now before your very eyes? They kept increasing the amount of ISOE Super in relation to decreasing the amount of other materials. They found that they could really boost and boost and boost a less amount of expensive other materials by sticking in more of this hot dog filler, more of this Oscar Mayer stuff, this ISOE Super. But the perfume, again, must lend itself to that. It must be a dry perfume, a woody perfume, an incensey perfume. You're not going to make like a ambery rose musk fragrance and then put a bunch of ISOE Super in it. That would destroy the fragrance, okay? You're not going to make like a fougere, a classic fougere with a bunch of tonka, right? And then shove ISOE Super in it. Again, that would disrupt it. It has to be a dry fragrance from the get-go for this trick to work. A woody and incensey kind of dry spice perfume. And that's what Declaration was. Declaration was a modernized slightly colder, more clinical take on Eau de Hermes, because Runitska, who created Eau de Hermes, Edmund Runitska, was the teacher of Jean-Claude Ellena. So Declaration was kind of like an homage to Eau de Hermes. That's why they smell very similar. However, Eau de Hermes doesn't contain Isoi Super at all. Didn't exist back then, 51. Modern formulas might have some, I don't know, but not the original. Declaration, however, does. 35%. And it moves right on along. So, as you know, Jean-Claude Ellena would eventually come to work for Hermes himself. And once he did, he would create Terre de Hermes. Terre de Hermes is more than half Isoi Super. And a lot of people like to really bang the gavel. And again, oh, they destroyed the perfumes, oh, the natural synthetics, ruining everything, making everything smell like crap, right? They always pound the gavel at Terre de Hermes and say, oh, well, it's like more than half Isoi Super. And yeah, that's true. It's 55% Isoi Super. But that same person who makes that criticism will also hypocritically wear a green Irish tweed, right? They're going to wear a green Irish tweed from 85, and that is like more than half the hydromercenol in that fragrance. But that one has a much bigger price tag than Terre de Hermes does, so that makes it okay. You know, it's got real iris in it. No, it doesn't. It's got real violet in it. No, it doesn't. But, you know, it's whatever. I'm just saying. It's pot calling the kettle black, or whatever the old saying goes. But 55% Isoi Super, and the main reason is that fragrance is trying to achieve a certain level of volume and sillage, but remain light and transparent. It's one of the many tricks that Jean-Claude Ellena would become known for, creating these big watercolor perfumes that were very transparent, had lots of sillage, but were not very intense on the wearer. So very sort of flits and flicks and kind of moves about the space. Everyone knows you're wearing perfume, but nobody is choking on it. That's the key difference here. Everyone knows you're wearing scent, but no one is gasping for breath as a result. So it's this very transparent volume. And he kind of based that off of fragrances from the 70s, because if you remember, guys, Jean-Claude Ellena got his start in the 70s. Essence Rare, stuff like that, was where he started. So all of those chypres from the 70s, stuff like Cristal, stuff like Silences, okay, all those fragrances were also very transparent, very light, very fresh, fruity florals, cold, bitter, you know, things like that. So he kind of took that whole 70s crystalline transparency aspect of those women's fragrances, and he brought that into the future and spun it into men's fragrances and started spinning into stuff like Declaration, Terre de Hermes, so on and so forth, all right? Isoi Super was the key component to him doing that successfully. And then, of course, if you want to go really off the rails, you want to get nuts, then stuff like Perles de la Ligue has 80% Isoi Super in it. Now, that's gross. 80% Isoi Super, 80% one material. At that point, you're just almost like, you know, it's, I kind of feel like you're just ripping people off at that point. It's almost like the 100% Isoi Super, Molecule 01. I mean, Molecule 01, it's a suspension of one material, okay? And oh, you can say, oh, it's minimalism, it's artistic minimalism, you know, it's less is more. But I'm like, yeah, less is more, but you're literally just being sold a raw material in a fancy bottle, and you're paying so much money for it. It's like the people who buy that Not a Perfume, right? Which that's from Juliet Has a Gun, and that's like all Cetylox. That's a suspension of Cetylox. And they even call it Not a Perfume, but they sell it for like $200 and you run out and you buy it. So, I mean, I don't know. It's what you want to call that. Is that a Mandela or a Streisand or a Stockholm? It's one of those. One of those syndromes is causing that problem, but I'm not buying it. So, y'all can buy it though. If I want to do that, I'll just get my raw materials from a supplier and make my own dilution. I can sell you 20 bottles of Molecule 01. They won't be in fancy bottles, but I can sell you 20 of them for the same price that he's going to sell you one. So have fun with that. But anyway, now you know a little bit about Isoi Super. It is kind of this sillage booster. It creates the trail of a perfume, as they say in the industry. And it has been widely abused, but it is a material that I think has merit. You know, again, I'm one of those devil's advocate types. I mean, my channel is the Scented Devil anyway, right? I'm one of those devil advocate types that goes, well, you know, naturals are great. You know, sandalwood and oak moss are great. You know, orris butter is great. Bergamot oil is lovely. Natural lavender and rose oils are all great. But you know what makes them even greater? What makes them even better? Is when you take that fragrance, that chypre that you're building, and you put the labdanum in there, and the oak moss and the sandalwood in there, and you put a little bit of the rose oil in there, and you got, you know, whatever else you're going to stick in there, maybe a little bit of olibanum too, and your musk choices. So let's say you're going to put some civet in there, but then you drop in some aldehydes, and boom, the aldehydes make it explode and smell amazing. But they're synthetics, aren't they? Yeah, they are. Maybe you make a perfume that's based around incense, you know, and you put a little bit of isoe super in there, okay, to expand the sillage trail. Boom. Memorable masterpiece perfume, you know. Where would Kouros be without the animalis note? Purely synthetic note. Where would it be without it, right? You take it out, it's just some weird, soapy kind of patchouli fragrance, okay? Because that's the animalic material in that fragrance, and it's a synthetic. It's not real civet. I've said it many, many times till I'm blue in the face. It's not real civet. I will say it again. It's not real civet. Get it out of your head. Isoe super is kind of in the same ballpark. It's a material that was devised and by itself doesn't smell very good, especially in high dosage. I mean, if you do a dilution, like you do a molecule 0.1 style dilution, okay, maybe it can have a certain pleasantness to it, but it's like empty calories, right? It's just you're eating saltine crackers at that point. So there's so much more you could do with a saltine cracker besides shoving it in your face. You could put something cheese on it or whatever and make something out of it. So that's how I feel about isoe super and all those materials. Ambroxan, dihydromercenol, same way. By themselves, they're kind of boring, kind of harsh, kind of one-dimensional, you know. But if you use them properly, like seasoning, right? People who are afraid of spices. If you use seasoning properly, you can make something really special. That goulash you're throwing together can be a memorable meal if you know how to season it properly. So that is how you should look at these synthetics. Isoe is no exception. It is a seasoning. It is a salt shaker. It is something that is meant to enhance the flavors that you've already put in. You made a roux, okay? You've already braised your meat. You've got a nice liquor that you've created from the vegetables you've cooked down in some butter. Stir it all together, make a really good fry. You've got all the flavors going already, and just the right amount of salt, right amount of MSG makes it explode, correct? Isoe Super does the same thing. This has been The Unlist, and I hope you've enjoyed watching.